nó trôi ra đầy á, rồi rác đến nè, đó như con thấy kìa đầy. Khu này là nước ngập vô trong nhà luôn á chứ.
In 2025, you can order a French fine dining meal with just 3 taps on your phone. But just a few kilometers away, someone is eating wilted vegetables picked from a supermarket dumpster. This remains the daily reality for more than 1,000 people in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. They're not homeless, but they don't really have a home either. No one forces them to stay, but no one helps them leave. So who are they? In this episode of NVL Travel Documentary, we take you inside their world. Number 1, the biggest slum in Saigon, Xuyen Tam, is not just a canal. It is a boundary line between development and delay, between the rising skyline of Ho Chi Minh City and a community that time has left behind. Stretching over 6 kilometers through Binh Thanh district, the canal cuts through one of the city's oldest inner urban zones. It begins at the Neo Loc Thi Nghe Canal and winds its way toward the Vam Thuat River. Along its banks are homes that were never designed to last, yet somehow have survived for decades. The area surrounding Rach Xuyen Tam is often referred to as the city's largest slum. This title does not come from a single statistic, but from a combination of factors that together paint a sobering picture. Over 1,600 households are currently living along the canal, packed into structures built without permits on land that has never been formally zoned for residential use. The total area occupied is less than 15 hectares, but the density is extreme, estimated at more than 1,000 people per hectare in the most crowded sections. Many of the houses stand on stilts extending directly over the water. Others are stacked tightly along narrow alleys where sunlight rarely reaches the ground. Walls are made from corrugated tin, salvaged plywood, and concrete patched by hand. There are no green spaces, no formal drainage systems, and no public infrastructure that matches the scale of human life found here. The origins of this settlement trace back to the post-war years, when people migrating from rural provinces sought work in the growing city. Unable to afford formal housing, many settled along the canal's edge, gradually building a parallel neighborhood. Informal, improvised, and increasingly invisible to official planning. Today, the residents of Rach Xuyen Tam live in legal limbo. Most do not hold land titles, and many lack official addresses. Without legal recognition, their homes cannot be upgraded, insured, or even connected to city services in a reliable way. They are physically present, but bureaucratically erased. This is not just one of Ho Chi Minh City's most densely populated informal settlements. It is also one of its most complex, where decades of survival have created a fragile architecture of shelter of memory and of quiet resistance. Number 2, the row where the sun never comes. If you ask a local about Rach Xuyen Tam, the answer you will most likely receive is simple. Just go and see it for yourself. Because telling the story of this place would take far too long. You cannot explain it in a sentence or even in a paragraph. Rach Xuyen Tam is not a landmark that can be summarized. It is a lived reality, one that must be walked through, breathed in, and endured even briefly to be understood. Thousands of families live along this canal, many of them in houses built without permits, without foundations, and without access to clean water or proper drainage. The alleyways are so narrow that even daylight struggles to reach the ground. When you enter one of these homes, the first thing you notice is the heat pressing against your chest, as if the air itself has stopped moving. These houses were once 6 meters wide, but over time they have been divided into tiny compartments. Each room is about 1.5 meters across. Families with 6 to 8 members live inside these rooms, sleeping in shifts and eating while standing because there is no space for a table or a mat. Ventilation is almost non-existent. The walls are built from patched metal sheets, warped plywood, and old tarps. A single yellow bulb hangs from the ceiling, casting just enough light to see, but never enough to feel awake. The rooms have no windows and no fans to circulate air, causing the heat to accumulate and cling to the body like a second skin. Outside the alley is only 1 meter wide. Even at noon, the corridor remains dark and damp. The smell of smoke, sweat, mold, and cooking oil blends into a constant layer that coats everything inside. Residents have a name for this place. They call it the row where the sun never comes. According to the Ho Chi Minh City Urban Development Department, as of early 2025, more than 46,000 households still live along canals and drainage zones in similar or worse conditions. Rent in these places is low, sometimes less than $40 per month, which makes leaving nearly impossible for many families. In this environment, comfort is no longer expected. What remains is the ability to survive one more day under a roof that leaks beside a canal that smells of rot in a room where light is a luxury few can afford. Number 3. Surviving the uninhabitable. For families living along Rach Xuyen, the line between waste and nourishment no longer exists. Discarded vegetables with yellowed edges, crushed cartons of milk close to expiration half-rotted roots, and bags of rice split open by careless hands. These make up what becomes dinner. Women walk quietly to the back gates of grocery stores, not to steal, but to salvage what others have already rejected. There is no bargaining, no dignity, and no time to hesitate. You take what's there, and you carry it home fast, before the flies or the rain reach it first. Cooking takes place not in a kitchen, but in the corner of a damp concrete floor. The stove is a rusted tin frame filled with damp charcoal lit slowly under smoke that gathers long before heat arrives. The fire struggles to stay alive, but they persist because there is no alternative. The walls trap everything. Heat smell exhaustion. The only light comes from a dull yellow bulb overhead, barely illuminating the faces crouched beneath it. Meals take place in cramped, sweltering spaces. The entire family squeezes together over a meal, trying to endure the stench rising from the canal that seeps into every corner of their lives. To them, the filth and foul smell are not as frightening as the poverty and hunger that loom over their existence and their family. On hot days, their lives paint a picture of poverty and decay. But on rainy days, that picture is further stained with constant dangers they are forced to endure. When rain comes, it tries to creep in through every gap it can find. It seeps through roofs patched with nylon sheets, drips down into electrical sockets placed high on the wall in a failed attempt at safety. A woman shared that on the 3rd day of Lunar New Year, one year heavy rain poured down and their house began to leak. Water seeped in and caused an electrical socket to short circuit. At that moment, she thought it might be the last day for her and her 4 children. But all she could do was patch things up as best as she could and continue living through those precarious days. Because in Rach Xuyen Tam, people do not live to thrive. They live to endure, and sometimes even that feels like a luxury. Number 4. Children in the slum. If poverty, hunger, and pollution seem like nothing worth mentioning to you, if you believe these are simply the backdrop of any developing city, then you haven't heard the story of a woman in Rach Xuyen Tam who lost her children not once but almost forever. She has 7 children, and for years she lived with the ache of knowing 3 of them had disappeared. Not taken in a moment of violence, not lost to crime, but quietly without notice into the endless blur of alleyways and sidewalks that stretch across this city. They had no home address, no official ID, no record in any system that could help find them. Years later, the mother managed to find them again through whispers and chants. She brought them back to the same place they had vanished from. A narrow room pressed against a concrete canal barely wide enough for a mattress. But even now, the children do not step far from that home. They are afraid not of getting lost, but of disappearing again without anyone noticing. None of her children attend a public school. Rather, they are not allowed to. Without official documents, their names cannot be added to school lists or government records. Even if they had those papers, poverty alone would still keep them away from uniforms they cannot buy, from books they cannot replace, from meals they cannot pack. So they study where they can in makeshift classrooms lit by borrowed electricity and built from borrowed hope. These spaces, called charity class, are run by volunteers who teach with whatever materials they can find. There are no desks, no clean whiteboards, no playgrounds to rest between lessons. Children sit cross-legged on rough floors, write on their knees, and whisper their reading so they don't disturb the babies sleeping behind them. This is not education built for growth. It is education built for survival. It does not promise a future, but it keeps one from closing completely. And for this family, and so many others like them, that is still worth showing up for. Even if the rest of the world continues to look away. Number 5. Social issues. In a place like Xuyen Tam Canal, where people are crammed together in tight, confined spaces, what inevitably follows are social problems. Without room to breathe, a physical or economic crisis becomes part of the landscape. For many residents, stable employment is not just difficult to find, it is nearly impossible to sustain. Most families rely on irregular labor, such as selling lottery tickets, collecting scrap metal, or washing dishes in informal markets. These jobs offer no contracts, no protections, and no long-term prospects. If work is missed for even a single day because of illness, flooding, or family emergencies, it often means there will be no money for food that night. Over time, this kind of uncertainty erodes not just financial stability, but also emotional resilience. It becomes a way of life that centers entirely around survival. Access to healthcare only deepens the fragility. Without legal identification or household registration, most residents are excluded from public health insurance schemes. Even when clinics exist nearby, they often turn patients away for lacking the required documentation. When injuries occur, often due to unsafe housing or contaminated water, they go untreated until they escalate into life-threatening conditions. According to a 2024 report by the Ho Chi Minh City Department of Health, more than 65% of residents living along informal canal settlements have no medical files in the system, effectively rendering them invisible in public health planning. The strain of these conditions spills into family life. In homes that barely measure 10 square meters, often occupied by entire families, privacy does not exist. Children sleep next to cooking pots. Arguments are overheard by neighbors through thin walls. The constant stress of overcrowding and deprivation fuels conflict, and in many households, it leads to emotional or even physical abuse. But without legal housing status or community outreach services, victims remain silent, caught between fear of violence and fear of displacement. Even though they've grown used to hardship, the air remains heavy with worry, because nothing feels more painful than imagining this future for their children. Number 6. Relocation Plan. 14,000 billion dong. That's the budget Ho Chi Minh City has allocated for compensation and resettlement under its massive relocation plan. The goal is ambitious: to move over 46,000 homes built along the city's rivers, canals, and drainage corridors, areas vulnerable to pollution, flooding, and infrastructure failure. But while the number is large on paper, it feels distant and abstract for those still living with rats' floodwater and crumbling walls. The plan promises to improve urban quality of life, reduce disaster risks, and reclaim clean waterways. But for many residents, it remains nothing more than a vague possibility. As of early 2025, only 5,717 homes are expected to be relocated, barely 12% of the total households affected. They listen to the news on an old radio. They know, and they wait. But that's all they can do. The city says it is still evaluating legal status eligibility for compensation and land clearance logistics. For those living without title deeds, with no formal household registration, or in subdivided homes with unclear ownership, this process is a maze with no clear exit. Families that have spent 2 or 3 decades living beside the canal now find themselves caught between regulations and real estate appraisals. Told to wait, but never told when it will be over. They see the redevelopment projects in other districts and hope their turn will come. Others are skeptical, having waited through multiple announcements over the last 20 years. What worries most of them is not just when they will be moved, but what they will receive and whether it will be enough to begin again. Compensation packages vary, and for people who earn less than 5 million dong per month, even a modest new apartment may feel out of reach. This is not just about leaving a slum. It is about uprooting entire lives. It is about trusting that promises written in planning documents will translate into real walls, real keys, and real futures. Until then, the dream of relocation remains where it has always been, suspended somewhere between hope and hesitation, between political vision and personal reality. Number 7. Why they stay. But after everything, have you ever wondered why they still stay? Why do families remain in rooms no larger than a hallway, where the air hangs heavy with dampness and the scent of decay never fades? Why do they raise their children beside stagnant water and mountains of garbage, with no promise of safety, no privacy, and no relief? It's not because they do not see the filth or feel the danger. It's because here, survival costs less than anywhere else. In Xuyen Tam Canal, a rented room can cost as little as 1 million dong per month. The space may be dark with no windows or ventilation, but it allows people to sleep under a roof without starving. These are workers who sell lottery tickets, clean houses, or scavenge plastic from street bins. Their income doesn't stretch far enough to cover clean water, stable walls, or a front door that locks. But here in these slums, at least they can pay something, and payment, no matter how small, buys them just enough time to make it through the month. The price they pay in return is not just in mold-stained ceilings or broken floor tiles. It's in lost dignity, constant exposure to disease, and the quiet humiliation of being trapped in a place no one wants to live, but no one can leave. Moving elsewhere isn't only about finding a new home. It's about saving enough to pay deposits, arrange documents, leave work for days, and gamble on a system that has rarely kept its promises. Some stay because they believe compensation will come, that the city's long-delayed relocation plans will eventually reach their names. Others stay because leaving is a luxury they've never known. Their choice isn't to live like this. Their choice is to not disappear completely under something worse. And so they remain rooted not in soil or stone, but in what the city leaves behind. Number 8. A loop without solution. What truly happens after people are relocated from the slums? For many, the answer is rather more complex than a new roof or a fresh start. While relocation offers walls, windows, and official addresses, it does not always offer the thing they need most: a way to survive. In many resettlement zones built on the outskirts of Ho Chi Minh City, families from places like Xuyen Tam Canal have struggled to adapt. They move into new apartments that are often hours away from where they used to live and work. These buildings are cleaner, safer, and more modern, but they are also disconnected from the informal economies that once sustained these families. There are no jobs within walking distance, no recycling depots, no roadside markets where they can earn by the day. In these sterile neighborhoods, many people lose the only thing that made their lives possible: access to daily income. For those who earned their living collecting scrap pushing carts or selling street food, the new locations offer no familiar ground. Public transportation is limited and costly. Without a motorbike, commuting to old work zones can consume half a day and nearly all of their wages. In time, families start to miss payments, fall into debt, or simply abandon their new homes. With nowhere else to go, they move to another stretch of neglected land, often by a canal or under a bridge. Quiet places where they can disappear and start over, unnoticed by the system. This is not just a problem of housing. It is a problem of livelihoods. When jobs are out of reach, shelter alone cannot keep people from returning to the margins. A relocation plan without an employment solution does not erase poverty. It merely shifts it from one side of the city to another. Urban poverty behaves like mold. It does not vanish when you clean the surface. It regrows wherever conditions allow it to settle. Unless people are given not just homes, but a way to sustain those homes, the cycle will repeat itself again and again. Erasing a slum is not about removing rusted roofs or crumbling walls. It is about transforming the structure beneath them. The fragile economy, the unstable work, the missing support. Only then can a relocation truly become a new beginning. Xuyen Tam Canal is not just a slum buried inside a city. It is a raw cross-section of inequality where dreams remain trapped beneath rusted roofs and promises still stuck on paper. The people here do not stay because they want to. They stay because leaving is not an option. They live in conditions no one should ever have to endure, simply because it is the only cost they can afford. If this story has made you pause and reflect, help us share it further. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to NVL Travel Documentary for more journeys that go beyond the surface.